Last night I won this chess game not by outcalculating my opponent, but by saving energy and making practical, logical decisions. Here's what I mean. If I was black, my opponent opened with knight f3. So I played knight f6. I went into what I thought was going to be a Nimzo line, c4, e6, and then he played e3 and out of book on move 3, which is pretty common in my games, really. So I'm not a lazy person. I work full time and an adult. I've got all the usual stresses and strains that entails, as well as doing this YouTube channel and lots of other projects and loads of things to sort. So I still want to play chess, but I can't invest the time. So this is why I'm trying to show my mindset during this video. And please don't tell me any engine lines or anything, because I'm going to analyze this at some point. It's not engine lined at all. I've not gone through this yet. I'm basically going through this now because it's fresh in my head because I played it last night. So let's just see what we get. So in this position, I'm thinking, right, let's just play b6, right? Because I've played the Dutch lines before and the Dutch structures. Let's just play b6. I don't know what white's going to do, but for my point, b6, bishop b7, and my opponent played b3. So hold on a minute, it's mirroring me in this position. So in this position, right, I just got to go and play bishop b7, right? There's no other move really, right? Otherwise, why play b6? The plan's to play bishop b7, so just play bishop b7. There's no thought involved really on that one. So white went on and bishop b2. And what I'm not going to do in this video, I'm not going to show variations. I'm going to talk about a couple of variations so you can maybe practice calculation and visualization as well. Plus, I'm too lazy to put them on the board. So what happens next? What do I do in this position? And like I said, this is, it's not a position I played before. At move 3. Bishop e7 looks normal. Bishop e7 with a Dutch structure maybe. Castle kingside. Do I want to challenge the centre with d5? Not yet. Nothing too risky. So bishop e7 just keeps things solid. Quite happy with that. What is white going to do? White played bishop e2. And now I'm quite happy out of this opening actually, because my bishop's uncontested on those white squares. And in the Dutch setup, white usually think it was on the king side to sort of counteract that bishop. So I'm fairly happy in this position. What do I do? A castle. Right, it's a logical move. And then what's white going to do? Castle. I thought castle, knight c3, maybe d4. He played queen c2, and I'm thinking, so doesn't make much sense because queen c2 is quite common in the Nimzo setups. I'm speaking like I know what I'm talking about, but I don't really. I know a few structures and that's it. My openings today is limited. Yeah, I'm going to be brutally honest in this video, obviously. So what am I going to do? I could play knight e4 and f5, and I can get that Dutch structure to do that. Is he trying to play something like queen c3 and put pressure on the king side? Is he playing for a king side attack? Let's just be careful, because I've got to look at moves like, knight g5, things like that. Knight g5, I could play g6. But if I just play knight e4, followed by some move f5, then I block out any attacks against the king anyway. Let's do it. Let's just play knight e4. And what is white going to do? So I've also got threats, bishop b4, potential threats at some point, maybe a5 against that structure. But let's just play it sensibly. What's white going to do? Castle, maybe, I thought, in this position. Knight c3, that's another fair move. So I've got a choice here. Right, the knight's attacked twice. I need to either play f5, stick to my guns. I need to take the knight, or retreat the knight. Retreat the knight just seems ridiculous. You have to bring the knight to e4 to drop it back. So basically just completely dismiss that out of hand. I want to play f5 because that's what I said I were going to do. Carry out with that plan. If knight takes, at least I've got bishop takes e4 hitting the queen. Maybe e3, and then I could drop the bishop back, and I've still got a decent bishop on that side, on the queen side. So f5, any other dangers to f5? Or even take it back with the pawn and open the f file. But let's just play f5 and see what white does. f5. And white is going to do, fairly quickly play d3. Okay, I've got two choices. I can retreat the knight, Or I can take the knight on c3. Or, actually, maybe third choice, knight c5, but it just looks a little bit awkward. And possibly gets the knight trapped. I've got two choices. Knight f6, retreating the knight. Or knight takes, knight on c3. Knight takes, knight on c3. Then there's queen takes or bishop takes. Obviously, queen takes is a threat. Checkmate on g7, but I can always play bishop f6 and counteract that. So I've got no choice here, really. I've got to take the knight, so I'll take the knight. There's no point in thinking any further than that, any deeper at all. He takes with the bishop. All right, so I've got a choice now. I can play d6 with the idea of knight d7, or I can play immediately bishop f6 to counteract that decent bishop on c3. But do I want to risk that and do that immediately? Pause that now. Well, as the missus had just walked into the room at this point, it seems a good time to put this in here. So why not take a butcher's after this video at my chess calculation method, the 0, 1, 2, 3 method. It's the video. Right, try and pick that up again. Where was I? Bishop f6, trade bishops. Don't need to make that decision yet. I can play d6, bishop f6 at any point. So let's just play d6. And d6 always weakens e6 in this sort of Dutch structure, and I haven't really found an answer to it, to be honest. But anyway, what is white going to do? White's just going to castle, and after castle, knight d7. My opponent took about 10 minutes in this position. I thought, what's he thinking about? It's castle, kingside, knight d7, black slightly better. To the bishop, b7. He took 10 minutes, so I'm thinking, not much really, I've got to be honest. Like castle, kingside, knight d7, and that's it. There's no point in wasting other time. Maybe other moves I'm thinking about. Should I play the knight to f6 or the bishop? Trade off the bishop. I can also play my queen to e8, and then I can bring my queen up to g6. I also really like moves like a5 at some point, maybe. But I didn't really think much because there's no point. Anyway, my opponent did this, and I went, whoa, castle queenside. Now a5 straight away looks good. a5, a4, split that apart. But my knight stuck on b8, and I'm a suckler for sort of classical development and developing the knight to d7. So I just did that. Played knight d7, and my opponent went knight d4, and I went, crap, that bloody pawn on e6. So, ouch, what an idiot. What an idiot. I'm now going to lose the exchange unless I can come up with something here. So, oh no, I don't panic. You know, it's 1700 players. I'm not playing Magnus Carlsen or Michael Adams. What do I do? I could play e5, knight e6, move the queen, knight takes, rook, queen takes, and then play something like a5, a4 potentially. Maybe you could play a4. I'm down the exchange. Doesn't look great. Wait a minute. I can play knight c5. But let's just look at that exchange line that I'm going to lose the exchange. I don't need to do that. I can play knight c5, knight c5, b4, and then I have to play e5. And then there's a complicated takes, pawn takes, my knight, I take knight, does pawn take back, does bishop take back, does white take on d6, ouch, the rook on d1 is also staring at the queen at some point. Right, I don't need to do any of that because the only move here for me is knight c5, and I don't need to calculate anything else. I need to go into that line or go into the e5, losing the exchange line. So there's nothing to think about. I just play knight c5. My opponent plays b4. And again, calculate a little bit, but there's nothing really to think about. I just have to play e5, right? So I'll just play e5. And then let my opponent make a move. I'm just going to save a bit of energy, have a drink of water. It's so hot in that room, drinking that water. And if he takes the knight, I'm going to take the knight. And then I'll start calculating from that point. But I'll just save some energy now and just let him calculate, And then he just plays this move anyway, knight f3. So I didn't have to calculate any of those lines because I can now move my knight to d7 or e6. I've saved a lot of energy looking at all those pawns. calculations. Yeah, maybe a bit lazy, but actually, no, I think it's also quite a practical decision to save energy and come strong later on. So now I've only got one choice, and it's do I play my knight to e6 or do I play my knight to d7? And I don't know which is best. So I would look, I had knight d7, back to f6, or do I play the knight to e6 and it stops any future like knight d4 moves, that pawn moves. I'm also looking in the future. I might want to play f4. But I've got to move this knight. Let's just bring it to e6. I don't know if that's the best move, but let's just do that. So let's do that. It's got to come to one of those two squares, right? So let's just do that. And what does white do? This move brings her up g1. So I'm thinking, well, he's getting out of the way of that bishop. Potentially, is he going to play g4? Is he really going to? It's an opposite sides castling thing, so I suppose he could throw those pawn forward and then try and jump up and attack against my king. But the queen, I mean, his f pawn's doing a good job of controlling those squares as well as the e pawn. But I don't see that white's got an amazing checkmate threat on immediately. But these are sort of long-term strategic things I've been thinking about. So what do I want to do in this position? I play a move here that I'm quite happy with. I don't like that rook on d1. My queen can come to a8. It gets out of the way of the rook. It also potentially can slide along the light squares to a4. It can also slide along the white squares the other direction. So queen e8, it also indirectly defends the knight, which is undefended if the bishop moves and the knight is protected. So I play this move, which I think is a good practical move. And my opponent plays g4 and he's going for it. And I'm thinking immediately, whoa, okay, we've got a nice attacking game on g4, but what I just take and he can't take with the rook, right? Because then the knight drops. I'm thinking this is a bit of a mistake by my opponent. So take on g4. Knight has to move to one of two squares, either e1, e2, in which I can play rook takes on f2. And it's true that white takes the pawn back on g4, but I'm a pawn up and I've got a rook on the second rank. I'm just thinking, in that position, I'm opening up my king to the white rooks. The white rooks can slide across, but like I've already said, my king side feels fairly safe to me. The knight on on e6 is protecting g7 and bringing the rooks across. I can bring the bishop to f6. So, come on, you've got to just take the pawn. You've got to go for it. So takes, knight drops back to this square, and then I take, and then bishop or rook takes. Bishop takes. So now we're on that weak knight, but it's like I played the queen to a8 and it's actually worked out pretty well because I just moved the bishop and the knight's protected. Or do I do something else? Do I move the queen anyway? And I don't know if this is the best move, but I want to get the other rook in the game, right? So I play here, queen f7. So I can defend the knight still, but I want to get the other rook to f8 and get on that file if I can. Because that rook's not doing anything yet. I want to get it in the game. The bishop is brilliant, so that's bonus. So the other rook across to f1, which is I thought was a potential move, and I don't think I've got much on here really. I've got to defend the knight. I would really like to bring the other rook across to f8, but rook takes, and then queen takes, but obviously the knight falls with check. I've no time to take the rook on g1, so that's a little bit annoying. So I have to just take the rook. Is what I thought I did anyway. And I thought we'd take back with the rook hitting the queen. I've got to move the queen. I've got limited number of squares that can go to. Like one. It's very limited. It moves there, right? And I'm thinking, okay, it's a little precarious. Is the rook going to go to g1? I'm going to have to move the queen again, but I can move the queen to h3 because I'm hitting the weak pawn on e3. That pawn's really weak. So let's do that. Like, what do you do? Bishop f3. Ah, okay, I didn't consider that. That's not a bad move. But this at least allows me to take the bishop. I don't want to be playing like c6 or anything like that. It just looks really weakening. I could take the bishop, and if either rook or knight takes back, which they're going to do, I can bring my rook to f8, and I can start trying to infiltrate with my queen and targeting the weak pawns around the king. And that pawn obviously is very weak on h2. So it's a no-brainer move really. Bishop takes, knight takes, no-brainer move across, bring the rook across to f8. No thinking required. And I'm happy with my position. I've got to be better position than my pawn up. I haven't really done that much, to be honest. I fumbled around into the position. So white plays queen d1. I didn't really calculate much here because it's white's move. There's lots of different moves available. So I just sort of conserved energy again. Took another drink of the water and it's bloody boiling in here, sort of thing in my own head, but obviously wasn't talking. So queen to d1. And I thought, queen g1 just jumped out straight away. So I thought, that looks good. Queen g1, just play it. I didn't really think much about it. Queen g1, queen g2, sorry. Obviously, we're hitting both pawns and we're ganging up on the rook. If the queen moves, ganging up on the knight as well. So yeah, this looks good. Knight d2, defensive move. Now what do? I could take off the rook. Probably knight takes to hold on to the pawn. But then I could pick up the other pawn. That's probably the best move. Oh, I didn't play it. I don't know. I guess, yeah, rook takes, queen takes. And then what was I looking at? I could pick up the pawn, but then yeah, that's probably the best move actually. Maybe just bring the rooks off at this point. For some reason, I didn't do that. I wanted to improve these pieces, and this is probably, it's not a mistake, probably is a mistake. It's an inaccuracy, but anyway, I played this move. Right, targeting e3 pawn. I am sometimes happy to keep the pieces on and go for an attack, so maybe that was in my mind, but I think looking back, rook takes probably the best move, but don't tell me. You can share your opinions as long as it's not computer generated. So rook g1, I thought I'm okay with the bishop being on g5 because obviously I made sure it was protected by the knight, but yeah, rook g1, got to move the queen away. Let's just move it somewhere. Queen f2. Not many squares to choose from. So what does white play in this position? And then, yeah, so queen g4. And again, I've got only move, really. I'm guessing now that I think I wish I'd have took the rooks off. The knight, again, is coming back. Not to haunt me, but just obviously weak and gets taken to check. So I don't have any moves to make and no decisions to make, so I don't mind that. Queen f5 also hits the pawn on d3. Queen f5, and I can trade queens if he plays something like e4 or something. So what does white do to this? I've got to play that move anyway. Plays queen back to b2. Okay, fine. And I think I would fairly running into sort of rapid times at this point, I think. And well, I could play a queen f2, but then it just sort of repeats moves. That doesn't seem any good there. And I want to play for more than a draw, obviously, in this position. So the knight's not great. Could do we improve the knight? The bishop's sort of floating in midair. So let's do something about that. I just played bishop h6. It's a move. It's also defending g7. There's any sort of mating attacks against that. And I do want to keep this bishop on that diagonal, which is hitting the e-pawn. So I just played that move. Whether it's the best or not, I don't know. I played it. Next move. Knight coming into the game, knight e4. Okay, so this is time for me to maybe trade queens and go after the e-pawn. So queen f3 without much thought, really. And white plays king to d2. Doing a good job at defending things. And then here I thought the e-pawn's pinned. So I could play a move like this one, and it just looks fun. So let's just play it. I had a quick little think about it. There's no other checks. Got to be careful that you don't want to get anything trapped or anything like that. It's fine. So I just played, yeah, this move knight d4 because it's fun. Why not? Right, hitting the queen. The queen's got to do something. Queen can't take queen now because I'll pick it back up with the knight fork, winning the rook on g1. It's a fancy little move. And if bishop takes, then pawn takes is absolutely fine. Then ganging up on the e3 pawn, probably winning the e3 pawn. I played that move, and let's just see what white did. Then got limited choices. The queen back to e1 is what I thought. And then I thought, yeah, actually I could take things off. I could play queen takes knight on e4. And then if pawn takes, I play the knight to f3. King moves somewhere. And then I can take the queen and take things off. And those pawns are doubled up. Maybe I penetrate with my rook, but not immediately. And I thought, well, I could do that. And then is there any checks? I've got to make sure there are no. If I'm playing a move like queen takes e4, I don't make a stupid decision and there's some other check somewhere before. But even if rook takes, that's why bother thinking, right? We can also just gang up on the e4. So I played instead, let's just play this move. Not do anything too rash. We just gang up on that pawn, right? And my opponent battles on all the time, hitting my queen. And then I'm like, I can take. I can't quite take. Let's drop the queen back. Maybe I can win a piece. Maybe I can. I'll bring the queen back. And what can white do about this? We're running really low on time at this point. Getting into well under 10 minutes, I think, each. Quite level on time. What does my opponent do? We need to. Right, let's make a move. Keeps the pressure on. Queen h4. Ah, my God. Have I trapped my queen? Breathe. I've got a square. I'm fine. I can play queen h5. But there is a warning that I'm low on time. Something like that could happen. Right, a little bit of a panic. Drunk the rest of my water. And what have I got to do? If possible, let's just trade queens, right, and go into this endgame. And stop pushing for more. Let's see what happens. Rook g1. But let's just do that. Let's just take them queens off. Sort of panic me a little bit. Now I'm just phone up and better sort of thing. Knight h4. It's just a move. Running out of time. Just make a move. e4. Yeah, makes sense. Right, what do I do? Let's relook at this knight. 2g6. Now I can have f4 square, so let's play that. And then he's probably going to attack with a rook. And attack the rook, yeah, 96. But let's just get that knight off the board. Take back with the rook. Yeah, and if he plays bishop d2, I can play rook h4, defending the bishop and also hitting the pawn. And he might not see that tactic. That's what I thought. Bishop d2, yes. Rook h4, yes. Bishop takes, and then rook takes pawn. Finally takes this pawn, and then takes this. And then what happened was a time scramble in under 5 minutes. I won another pawn, and my opponent resigned. So that is me. That is my thought process of trying to save time, trying to sort of play logical moves, practical moves over the board. And I'm still refining this. It's still a little bit crazy, still a little bit panicky. But if I can get into this mindset of balancing the logic, balancing calculation when you need to calculate, and balancing a long-term strategic thinking, then I think that could be the way forward. Thanks for watching.